what is the difference between being the president now in 2021 and 1997?
Oh, well, it's very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, there was a lot of uncertainty in 97, and nobody knew quite what to do, and they were looking around for somebody. I had not been in Hong Kong very long. I'd only been here for a couple of years. But they said, we probably need somebody to be president who maybe is from a major news organization.
And that was Washington Post.
That was Washington Post at the time. I was the correspondent here for the Washington Post. They said we probably need a big name news organization at the time. And maybe because of the transition from British to Chinese rule, maybe it's better if it's not a British president.
Better not a Chinese.
Better not a Chinese, better not a British. So you're American, you're kind of right neutral there, etc. And it was, I was already on the board, and I was already on the events planning committee, we call professional committee. So it was an easy step. And I told them, look, I need to have a good vice president behind me. That was the late Diane Stormont, who was with Reuters. And so this time, the time then, nobody knew what to expect. And so we, at the FCC, because I came in May, the handover was end of June. So one thing that we did while I was there is we just made the FCC a center for everyone to come through and speak. And so we had, we had Martin Lee come through, and Jasper Zhang, and everybody from all sides just came through. You had hundreds and hundreds of visiting journalists. So we decided, let's make the FCC the one place that they know they can come. All the people you want to see will come through here. We had 2 press conferences every day, one for the month leading up to the handover, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We had panel discussions, so it became kind of a beehive of activity.
Not anymore, huh?
Oh, well, the problem this time is, first of all, with the COVID restrictions, nobody's coming in. It was pretty amazing in 2019 during the protests. Hundreds of journalists were coming in from all over the world, but it's been really amazing since the last year. I haven't seen any of the other journalists from around the region because they can't get here unless they have a Hong Kong ID card. And even if they do, they would have to do 14 or 21 days in quarantine. So people have been covering it from outside of Hong Kong, which is not good. But the people based here, including some of my students, have been getting a lot more opportunities to cover things.
But is it true that it's difficult for foreign correspondents to come to Hong Kong now? Apart from COVID.
Well, the main thing is the visiting correspondents can't come in and out, because you can't just fly into Hong Kong now without some kind of a work permit or a visa. So far, knock on wood, there haven't been too many cases of foreign correspondents trying to be based here who have been told they can't come here.
Except the Financial Times guy.
Well,
Victor
Mallet was kicked out for other reasons a few years ago. There was someone who was trying to get a job working for Hong Kong Free Press. I think he was Irish citizen, and he couldn't get a visa approved in time.
Yeah.
And then there was Chris Buckley from the New York Times, who came down from Beijing and then could not get the permit approved in time to stay here and work, so he ended up going to Australia, where he's from.
Yeah.
But those are the only cases I've known of. There were some holdups. For a few months, people were worried about journalists not getting visas. All the major agencies, or most of them, had people waiting for visas. But eventually they all got cleared through.
So that's not yet a problem?
Not yet. Well, hopefully never. Hopefully never.
Oh, not yet a problem. So what is a problem? I read about you writing to the Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, that's one of the things you have to do as the FCC president. You sign a lot of letters. So, that was actually drafted by our Press Freedom Committee, and I put my name on it as the president of the club, because the police chief came out and was very much complaining about fake news. After their National Security Education Day, or whatever it was called, they had these children playing with toy guns. And I think one of the papers, I think it was Apple Daily, ran a photograph that showed those children playing with toy guns juxtaposed next to a photo from the Prince Edward situation from 2019. So the police chief came out and he said, oh, that's fake news, and we have to do something about all this fake news floating around and disinformation floating around. So when we started hearing fake news, we started thinking, at the FCC, on the Press Freedom Committee, we started thinking, wait, hold on a second here. What does this mean, fake news? First of all, there was nothing fake about the photo.
Yeah.
You could argue that was in bad taste to put the photos together or whatever, but they were legitimate photos.
It was a Reuters photo.
There's a Reuters photo, so there's nothing fake about the photos. So what's he talking about? What's fake news? And first of all, the police don't pass laws. The police, implement the laws that are there. So it's not for the police chief to say that, there's going to be a crackdown on fake news. He can't do that. If the government's thinking of passing a fake news law, we need to know what it is, what they're planning. We've seen how these laws have been misused around the region. You look at Singapore, you look at Cambodia, you look at Myanmar, where they use fake news laws to arrest journalists, so-called fake news laws.
Isn't it?
Thailand has a fake news law as well. These things are basically just used by authoritarian governments to stifle information they don't want to get out. Now, there is a problem of disinformation that does float around on the internet, etc. If they want to talk about some ways to combat that, we're all ears. And that was the point of my letter, saying, look, we teach courses at HKU on how to combat fake news and disinformation. Talk to us.
Come and be a part-time
Come talk to us, ask us our opinions. We're actually thinking of having a conference up there on, how do you tell what's fake news and what's real news and what you should do about it.
Well, you should invite the CP to be a speaker.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will. We will, absolutely. And we'd love police chief to come to the FCC and explain what he's talking about.
They never did.
They have a standing invitation. I am confident that I will continue to ask. I'm confident I'll continue to ask. I hope to see them.
But what about journalism in general?
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Hong Kong Journalists Association and others, they have almost press conference every day to talk about the problems.
Yes.
So you are aware of the problems faced by local journalists.
Absolutely, I know.
And you have to teach your students at the university.
Absolutely. So most of our students go into local media here too. Look,
some of them are watching you now.
Absolutely.
What do you think of the developments here? Is it very, very concerning, very disturbing?
It's very concerning. Look, I know Chris Young and I know Hong Kong Journalists Association very well. They're our friends and our partners. We had Chris Young over to the FCC just last week or so to talk to our Press Freedom Committee because we think foreign correspondents, local correspondents, we're all on the same, we're all on the same side, we're all in the same fight. So look, it's very, very concerning, and there have been a series of things that I find very worrying about press freedom in Hong Kong. And most of it is affecting the local reporters more than it affects the foreign reporters, but it affects all of us, as I said, because we're all in this together. And again, there's not one big thing I would look to, but I'd say there have been a bunch of little things.
Such as?
I call it death by 1,000 cuts. Bao Choi from RTHK being charged for doing something that journalists here, I'm told, have routinely done. I mean, I never had to do it, but journalists routinely do it, which is go to the public vehicle records and check license plates. I mean, that's not something considered terribly unusual. So that's one thing. The other journalist from RTHK, Nabella Koser, basically forced to leave. Why? Because she asked tough questions at a press conference at Carrie Lam.
That's terrible.
Oh my God, asked tough questions. Wow.
I think Donald Trump would like to fire
that's right,
the whole press corps.
Another RTHK journalist resigned. We say resigned, and then is leaving because she asked the WHO person about Taiwan at a press conference. A legitimate question, I thought. But again, people say, oh no, she should not have asked the question, so therefore, so she's in trouble now. Then you see this the new head of news at RTHK, Patrick Lee, I think his name is, who was a top civil servant. No journalism experience as far as I know. And he's been axing programs or axing episodes of programs, saying they're not, quote unquote, not balanced. Now, that's been a problem with public broadcasters all over the world, with VOA in America and Radio Free Asia. The Trump administration thought they weren't being loyal enough to his agenda. Every conservative every government in the UK always thinks BBC should be promoting their policies and not be so critical. So that's always been a constant theme. But I would hate,
not like here.
Not like this, where they're just coming in and just axing programs and axing episodes. I think you were on one that was axed.
Exactly.
Well, exactly. So that's worrying and that's troubling. And then you look at one of the things that I'm really concerned about for my students, for the journalists at the FCC, is this the shrinking of the space for public data. They're starting to say, for example, public data, you can't go into the company's registry at some point if they have their way, and you won't be able to look up ID numbers or residential addresses. Now, some people who don't, it's a very arcane issue, but some people don't understand how important that is. There are a lot of people with the same name in Hong Kong. But the one thing that Hong Kong has that other countries, including the US and others, don't have is you have this unique identifier, which is your Hong Kong ID number. So I can tell that this Emily Lau, who I'm looking for, is not this other Emily Lau over here. See, we need to be able to see the ID number. We need to be able to differentiate people. And it's important for transparency. It's important for investigative journalism because if you're checking out companies, if you're trying to check out corruption, if you're trying to check out who's sitting on the board of what company and who's connected to who, you need to know who people are. And the only way you can do it is if you've got that unique Hong Kong ID card number. especially because people deliberately try to obscure their names.
Yeah.
They try to spell it, if they're coming from the mainland, they might try to spell it in the Cantonese way, change a letter here or there, use an English name here or there. But Hong Kong has that unique Hong Kong ID number, which is a unique identifier. People can't hide around. That's important for journalism, that's important for investigative reporting, it's also important for forensic accountants, it's important for bankers.
Yeah.
And you're going to see corruption explode if people can kind of suddenly be on boards and companies and people on each other's cross directorships, etc. And journalists aren't able to dig that stuff up.
And Carrie Lam doesn't seem to care.
I don't know why they're even doing this. This is something they tried to do a few years ago. There was some outcry from people like David Webb, the open data, enthusiast and warrior. This is something that doesn't need to be done. They should be doing more. They should be doing more to open data here. Hong Kong doesn't have a Freedom of Information Act. There's no archives law, so government records can just disappear.
And they have disappeared.
And they have disappeared the same way as RTHK television programs can certainly disappear.
Suddenly, yeah.
So things suddenly can just disappear because there's no archives law. RTHK is a public entity. So if there was a Freedom of Information Act or a Public Records Act or all this, those shows should be archived somewhere for the public good.
And then there was this raid at the Apple Daily, huh?
Then you had the Apple Daily raid, you had the arrest of Jimmy Lai, marched through his newsroom in handcuffs. I mean, I understand, police do their thing, but look, if you want to arrest Jimmy Lai, you call his lawyer and you say, hey, have Jimmy here at 9 o'clock in the morning, That's how you arrest people. Why do you need to go in with that heavy show of force? And we saw video of police looking on notebooks and looking on people's desks and all of this sort of thing. And, so you see all of these things going one by one, and you say, each one of these things can be justified on its own, but you look at it in totality and you say, boy, this is a real kind of crackdown.
And the mass resignation at the cable TV news.
You've got mass resignations there, and then the things you hear coming from government officials. Nothing supporting press freedom. In fact, they seem to say, well, press freedom doesn't give you the right to do this, and you can't do that, and you can't do the other thing. And government officials in the executive's office talking about fake news and talking about we got to do something about all this fake news.
It's on Carrie Lam's agenda.
It's on her agenda. We know something's coming. Again, I'm heading a journalism program at HKU and nobody's told me about it. You think they would want to at least get my opinion about it.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
I haven't heard a thing about it. I said, we teach classes on disinformation and how to combat it.
Well, you have to offer your opinion, even if they
We will do that. We'll be offering our opinion. And that's what our letter to the police chief was about, which people misunderstand. Why are you writing to the police? Because he said they're going to start prosecuting fake news. Well, how? There's no law. What are you talking about here? So all of these things, and plus there's this, I've noticed lately, there's this attitude where government officials seem to think that any type of criticism is, and this word that they use, smearing.
Yeah.
If you raise questions about the Sinovac vaccine, why are you smearing the vaccine? If you raise questions about the new electoral reforms, changes, whatever, why are you smearing the electoral reforms? They don't seem to want any kind of criticism. Any kind of criticism is taken as smearing or insulting or.
So Hong Kong's ranking on the world stage of press freedom is dropping and dropping and dropping.
I'm shocked they're at number 80. I thought they'd drop further than that, but I guess the ranking came out before a lot of the things in 2021. I think they just measured mostly 2020. But yeah, look, and I think it was at number 18, not too many years ago.
So that is a salutary lesson for all of us, isn't it? You can be doing quite well, and just within 1 or 2 years or whatever, boom.
Yeah.
You're down there.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm not sure people in power care where their press freedom ranking is. I think what they care about is control. They care about, as they've said, and again, this is another thing I heard coming from, people in the pro-establishment side saying we need patriots running the news media. What does that mean?
Patriots.
I mean, everybody's a patriot.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody's a patriot. I'm a patriot. Everybody's a patriot. But it doesn't even mean anything. These vague terms. But I mean, again, we're all national security law is now the law of the land. We have to obey it. Everybody knows that. But it says in the national security law that they have to improve the supervision of the media. And that's not supervision of the media. And that's not really explained what that means. Supervised by who and for what reason?
Well, not by you and me, of course.
No, probably not. So that's why, again, it's a bit vague. So many things are vague.
So